Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us for another session at today's Tech Showcase. Before I hand it on over to our speaker, I just want to remind you quickly about that chat and the Q&A box. Make sure to drop your LinkedIn. We love to connect. And with that, Sam, I will hand it on over to you.
Thanks so much, and nice to meet all of you virtually. I'm Sam, CEO of Fairgen. I've been in the AI space for 10 years, in the market research space for the last 3 years. We founded Fairgen with the mission of bringing the latest advances in AI and Gen AI to the market research space, and that's pretty much why I'm here today. I want to speak a bit about myself and the company. So 2.5 years ago, we realized there's a pain point that's pretty much present across the whole industry, including agencies, panels, and customers around understanding niches, right? And it's typically business critical to be able to properly address our target segments in a way that's granular. What you want to be able to understand what Gen Zs think, what professionals think, and it's really hard because the data gets more and more expensive, harder to get, and it takes more and more time to get as the niches get smaller and smaller. And that's a pain point that everyone understands and everyone knows about, right? And we believe that AI solutions can basically help resolve these issues. So we raised about $8 million up till now just to solve that mission. And we are relying on the technology of synthetic data, which is basically at the core of pretty much everything we're doing. We're now partnering with leading research companies across Europe especially, but we're also expanding to the US. And you can see some of the logos at the bottom. So on a personal note, so I've been a researcher for a long time in the synthetic data space. I went through Imperial, Oxford, UCL. I did a PhD between UCL and Facebook AI research on the topic of synthetic data, and basically then founded Fairgen. So I want to talk a bit in more details on basically what we're building and the problem that we're targeting. So it's a very simple problem. Let's say we are running a survey, right, of 1,000 people, Gen Pop, for example, to keep it simple. We're targeting a general population. We get 1,000 people. There's a segment of 5%, 10% penetration that we have, and we hence basically have 50 Gen Zs, 100 Gen Zs max, which is not enough, let's say, to read that segment, because we want to be able to have insights that are going to be really reliable from a statistical perspective. And it's a problem that, again, is very present. So reweighting is not useful at the segment level for the simple reason that if you, for example, apply weights and just even 2x weights, when you zoom in on that segment, you still just have 50 Gen Zs. You don't have 100 Gen Zs because you apply 2x weights, and that's the main key problem. And we are addressing this issue using synthetic data. So we're able to double the effective sample size of your segments without coming back to the field. We're completely offline. We're not connected to the web. We're not connected to panels. We use AI models trained on your data, on your 1,000 samples, for example, or less or more, to be able to basically expand your samples at the segment level. And that's what you can see here at the bottom. The interesting thing is, if you were to boost these segments in the real world, right, which is there's a lot of methodologies for that, and it's being done, a lot. It can take days, weeks, or sometimes months to get enough samples for the segments that are of interest with traditional methods. With synthetic boosters that have a well-backed statistical methodology, you can get a boost for the segments of interest in less than 20 minutes and for less than $1,000, which is obviously a very reasonable price, but also a time that basically cannot be beaten by traditional methods, right? So it allows to have basically insights that would have never been possible with traditional methods. And that's a key thing we're bringing to the world of research. That is proprietary, and that again relies on dozens of years of research. The way it works and the intuition behind it is we get some data. So data is composed of clusters of age, of profession, and some deeper things that we don't understand. But modern AI models can understand the structure, can cluster the data, and basically use all of the related clusters to boost the segments that are of interest. For example, here, there is this gray segment. that is of interest, right? And there's many other clusters that are sometimes close, sometimes far, right? And if we're able to understand the correlations between this cluster of interest, this segment of interest, and other clusters, we're able to basically extrapolate from these related clusters to that cluster and then boost the data. So that's basically the key thing. And the key insight is use patterns, use correlations that you learn from your data to strengthen and zoom in on segments you're interested in. In very practical terms, that allows you to double the amount of data you have for a segment. I want to talk about the workflow now and about the way it actually works in real life. So you upload your file, your raw data file of 500, 1,000 respondents, right, to dozens of questions. You train a model that takes 5 to 20 minutes. You generate some conditions. So you say, for example, I want to boost Gen Zs, right? These are 10% segments, for example. You boost them, you get a new data file, you download this data file, and you treat it as if it was completely real. And the key thing is that this data is relying on your file. It's not data that's invented through LLMs, or it's not data that basically it's made up, or that it's just cloned from your segment. We're learning patterns from the full file and using these patterns to strengthen what we know about the segment of interest. And in terms of workflow, it's very easy to integrate into your main workflow for the simple reason that is that you get a raw data file that looks like a file you would have gotten from the panel you worked with to get your original data file. So it's a very simple way to integrate synthetic data into your day-to-day life, and that's basically the main value that we have. So just to summarize it, takes 20 minutes to upload, train, and generate a boost, and it gives you a 2x boost. That is easy to validate because you can just compare it to a real booster. So I want to talk a bit about what we call parallel testing. And the interesting thing is it basically copies what people have been doing for years at the time of the introduction of online polling. So about 20 years ago, some people claimed that we could get sort of the same results as in the real world by targeting people online and getting them to respond to surveys. Obviously, there was an insane amount of skepticism at the time. People were saying, there's no way. How is it possible that we'd be able to get the same results by polling people online and polling people in the real world, right? We can't see these people in front of us. We cannot interact with them. We cannot ask them this question in the real world. There is no way we can get statistically equivalent results, right? And, that makes sense. Like, I could have asked these questions, right? And the pioneers of the online polling world said, okay, we have a very simple tool in hand to show that it is actually possible. And that tool is parallel testing. It's very simple. You do the same research study in the real world. You target, 1,000 people in person, and you basically just generate your analysis, your reports. You do the same thing online, and you compare whether there is any statistical difference between the results you got online and the results you got in the real world, right? And basically, based on this, you were able to prove statistically that online polling is correct from a statistical sense or not, right? And interestingly now, more than 80% of surveys are run online, right? And that parallel test tool has enabled basically the online pioneers to bring in these methodologies and to get them widespread, right? We're claiming that we can do the same thing with AI-based data, right? What we're saying is we have a tool that's able to generate data for segments we're interested in, right? So let's just do the same process. We will have a general population data set of, 1,000 people, right? We will have basically a segment that we're interested in, right? And we will have a booster that has been, gathered in the real world for that segment of interest. So for example, let's say we have 50 Gen Zs, we have 100 Gen Zs that were collected in the real world as a boost. We keep this data aside, the big boost that's been kept aside. We only train on a chunk of the segment, right? Let's say 50 Gen Zs, there's 1,000 people here, 50 Gen Zs out of it. There's a big boost for the segment of interest, and we generate a boost using Fairgen, right? And we're going to compare the Fairgen boost to the baseline real boost. And we're going to be able to show that the 150 or 200 or 500 Gen Z that are kept on the side are indistinguishable from the synthetic Fairgen boost. And that's a parallel test adapted to basically the boosting problem and to the synthetic data world. And that allows us to claim statistically that we're able to achieve a 2x. So that's basically how we show to all of our partners and how we showed to all of our partners that they can trust synthetic data. When we POC with agencies and customers panels, we typically do 5, 10, 20 of these parallel tests to convince them that across different types of studies, across different industries, across B2B, B2C, across use cases of very rare niches and less rare niches, that we can always guarantee this 2x or more. And this methodology of parallel testing and other statistical methodologies which we use to show that all of this works are co-developed with Emmanuel Candes, who is our chief scientific advisor, and who is the director of the statistics department at Stanford University and probably the most well-known and respected statistician in the world today. So all of this has deep academic and scientific roots. It's not just generating random data using LLMs, right? All of this is statistical. Typically, when we run a parallel test, what we're trying to show, and by the way, this what I'm going to show here is a case study that's based on real customer data, and that's how one of the tests we did to convince them to partner with us. But what we are typically doing is we say, okay, for this segment, we're going to look at 50 questions. For each of these questions, there's going to be between 2 and 10 categories. For all of these categories, we're going to look at the priorities, the number of people basically that answered this option, right? And we're going to compare these probabilities for the Fairgen data and for the big boost that was kept on the side. And what we see is that for example, in this study, for 99.5% of categories, there is no statistical difference between the booster that has been done in the real world and the Fairgen booster. And that's basically the way we show that we can trust synthetic data as if it was coming from a real panel. I also have here a little case study that's based on a real survey on dating apps. And there is 6,000 rows, 139 columns. We train on a fifth, or actually a sixth of that, right? And we look here at many segments, 20 segments, right, in a row. And for each of these segments, we try to compare the training data, a 2x boost, basically, so that has been done in the real world, and Fairgen data. And in terms of this score that we use, which is an equivalent of a margin of error, what we see is Fairgen is equivalent to a 2x boost on 20 different segments. And so this parallel test methodology that I've described before, we can also do it in one survey on 20 segments at a time, which shows a real good coverage of the possibilities in terms of sizes of segments and in terms of also awareness of niches. And that's basically a good way to show that things work out, right? And we also can go deeper, more granular, look at answers, and again, see that basically Fairgen is as good as a 2x boost. We go beyond boost right now. We're also working on other problems that are shared by the whole industry. And one of these is the quality of survey responses. A lot of agencies have, and customers, by the way, have concerns around the quality of responses, fraudulent responses, straight liners, and all of this. And so for this reason, we built in partnership with IFOP, which is one of our big partners, FairCheck, which detects and cleans unwanted responses. And we look for a lot of patterns, and we do it for quantitative and qualitative data. We check the quality of verbatims, we check the times of responses, and we also check for outliers using various ML algorithms that do outlier detection. So that's basically a key product we're currently in beta testing right now with a lot of other partners, and it's going super well. And it's a product that's already bringing a lot of value to the market. The next thing we are currently sort of in closed beta and exploring is report automation, which is all about going straight from a raw data file to a report, specifically for segments. What we want is to be able to give you a way to quickly generate an MVP reports for segments of interest. And that basically will create a full cycle from checking the quality of a survey at a segment level, to collecting more data using synthetic models for this segment of interest and generating a report for this segment that is again of interest. So this is basically the sort of axis that Fairgen is currently focused on, and the FairBoost is currently completely production grade, completely tested, validated by a lot of partners that you've seen before. Faircheck is in beta, and we would be happy to basically get more people into the beta program right now. So feel free to reach out to us if that is of interest. And the report automation is currently in development. We also are very proud and happy to be finalists at the 2024 Insight Innovation Competition, and we'll be in Austin basically presenting this work we've been basically contributing towards, and it will be very interesting to see basically what happens next, and we're very excited for Austin. I want to end here by talking more about high level about the kinds of things that you guys are probably thinking about right now. And that's just from the experience of us running a lot of discovery calls, again, with agencies, panels, and customers, which you guys are probably a part of. So there is the typical questions you're currently asking yourself are, how can it even work, right? Where is this, even coming from? And basically, synthetic data is, as we know, a topic that, is gathering currently a lot of skepticism, but the skepticism is going down really, really fast. And I want to talk about why you should trust it and why you should embark on this journey now and not in a year. So the key reason why it can even work is the following. Let's say we take food, for example, research, right? Simple, like, brand tracker on food or whatever food study. And the segments of interest are food habit segments. For example, you're interested in vegetarians, vegans, pescatarians, right? And let's take the example of vegetarians. Let's say we have 5% of our studies that basically consist of vegetarians. You want to double your effective site because 50 vegetarians is not a lot of data, right? Pescatarians, vegans, and so on have some food habits in common with this group. So if you're able to extract the signal that is present and shared across these groups, you're going to be able to basically decrease the uncertainty you have about the vegetarians. And that's why AI models are able to extrapolate. It's because they're really good at learning patterns, at learning that the older you are, the more you're going to typically answer to questions in that way. That the more restricted you are in terms of your food habits, the more you're going to answer in that way to this and these questions. And so by basically, in some way, federating all of these patterns together, you're able to basically reduce your margin of error, your confidence intervals at a segment level. And that's why synthetic data is useful. And again, we are starting from your data. We're not starting from a big base of surveys that has been found online. We're just training one model on your sample. And that's why it makes sense. It's a statistical methodology. It's a more modern version of some of the things that you guys have seen in the past. And it's just a well-productized statistical methodology for modern market research. So that's some intuition for why it can even work. Now, about why it's worth embarking on this journey now. If you're part of an agency, I can say with confidence that most agencies are currently exploring these options, because in other industries, it is now something that everyone has adopted, right? So it's obvious that the market research will also adopt it. So that's why you want to be leading the front on the synthetic data, basically value creation, in order to basically be the first to propose this to your customers. If you're an end customer, right? If you're part of Danone, Nestle, or just big CPG brands or various companies of that, the pain points that we see is a pain point that you face every day, right? Needing to understand niches. And basically, we provide a tool that allows you to do much more than what you were able to do up till before, right? We're allowing you to zoom in on segments you couldn't zoom in on before. And that basically will allow you to create more value for your customers, right? And if you're a panel, agencies will basically need you guys to also have these technologies in order to make it seamless for you to give some data on segments they need. So basically, I really believe that synthetic data will be adopted by pretty much everyone in the value chain. And I recommend to embark on the journey early in order to be basically the one to bring these technologies to your customers and benefit from that. Now, I want to also talk a bit about our experience with our partners, right? And how typically it worked from convincing completely very skeptical people onto basically getting them to adopt enterprise scale the technology, right? Because this question that you ask yourself, everyone asks, like all of these customers we had were asking themselves these questions, right? So the thing we always do is we say, look, even if you do not believe in synthetic data for philosophical reasons, it is actually extremely easy and it takes 2 hours to even test the technology, right? If you just reach out to us, you'll be able in a couple of hours to upload your data file, generate a boost, compare it to some data you will have kept on the side, and have a fairly clear idea of the quality of the data we've generated and why it really is a 2x boost. So it doesn't take weeks or months or years to basically build an opinion on whether this technology makes sense or not. It's a question of hours. And that's basically why we've been able to go above and against the skepticism, is because it's a technology that now became really easy to try, right? And so what I recommend is to try it out. So always when I get skepticism, I'm like, okay, it will take you a couple of hours to simply see whether it makes sense for you and for your customers. Now, a lot of people, another typical concern I see is, will I be able to sell this to my customers? That's another typical concern that I see, which again makes sense. We spend a lot of time training our partners to sell this technology. But the key thing always is that the value is higher than the skepticism customers can have, right? Because again, everyone needs this technology for very obvious business reasons, right? So when you come to a customer and say, again, you can basically, the same argument that I'm using here can be used for end customers, because you'll say, look, the value is here because no one will question the business use case, right, of synthetic data, right? And when people have some skepticism there, you'll say, okay, let's try it out. And in the same way that it's easy for us to show that it works, it's easy for you also to show that it works. And that's why synthetic data is now going to become a commodity. It's because across the whole value chain, it's easy to show that synthetic data can be sold. And that's I think the key thing that's going to make synthetic data big for the next coming years in the market research space. One last thing I want to say is about how to basically who typically is going to be using this technology internally, right? Typically, we like to work with data processing teams because they understand basically what things have to be applied to integrate this data into day-to-day workflows, right? So the way we typically work is we start by working in parallel with data processing teams and with business units. And on one hand, explaining to the data processing teams how to integrate this into their workflows. On the other hand, to business units, how to pitch it, how to use it, why it makes sense, and basically how to integrate it into their business propositions. And that's typically how we like to work. So that's basically where we are. I, again, want to say that I really believe that the next few years will be synthetic in the market research space for many reasons. I want to end also my discussion by talking about also the wide array of things that are currently happening in the synthetic data space and why we differ very much from some of these other things that are being built. So there's a lot of currently a lot of traction on the qualitative synthetic data side around from the synthetic focus groups, and also about generating reports automatically, which is something we're also working on. So on what we're doing in the quantitative synthetic data space, the nice thing is there is statistical guarantees and methodologies that can be validated from a statistical perspective, which is something we really vouch, and which is something that allows us to already be selling data to customers. And I want to say that it's very different from qualitative synthetic data, where obviously value can be created, but it's very much harder to get statistical guarantees for this data. So again, there's a lot of synthetic data methodologies, a lot of applications of it, but what we're doing is simply synthetic data for the quant world, and that's a very restricted use case, but a very large use case in the sense of volume, and that allows us to give guarantees. So yeah, thanks a lot to everyone for attending. And if you have any questions, if you're interested in testing it out, it's very simple. Just reach out to us. There is you can reach out to info@fairgen.ai and have more info also in the meantime on our website. And you'll also be able to see like more detailed use cases on various use cases you may be interested in. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sam, so much. As you all may have heard Sam say, Fairgen is one of our Insight Innovation Competition finalists, and we're super, super excited to have him join us at AIEX North America for the competition. So with that, I will give a shameless plug, and if you want to join and have yet to purchase your tickets, you can use the code FairGen30, all caps, to receive 30% off your order. But with that, Sam, thank you so much, and we'll see you over in the next session, everyone.
Thank you very much.